The setting of A Man of Some Repute, this English country town called Selchester, is really another character in the series because it's a typical English town with a cathedral, a castle, a river, and a lot of very interesting inhabitants. It's set in the early 50s, and whereas country towns in England and country towns in other places are all much the same, they have a commonality, things in England were very tough in the early 50s with the austerity and rationing and everybody miserable after the war. I think an American audience would be very interested to see how different an English town was in the early 50s from life in America in the early 50s.
My book, The Thief Taker, is set in 17th century London, and I'm from a historic town about an hour away from London. There would have been a lot of influences in my historic hometown that led me to look at London as a great location for a historical novel. During the 17th century setting of The Thief Taker, London is a really interesting jumble of half-timbered buildings, so lots of black and white jettied overhangs, winding, dirty alleys filled with squalor and animals and chickens and dogs running around. So it's a really chaotic jumble of a place. With the language in The Thief Taker, it's been a really interesting process getting it right, because in the beginning I started to write with that ear for the historical research, so it was quite oldie-worldy and authentic. But what I found was readers weren't getting along with that too well, so I developed a kind of more pared-down, sparse version where I wouldn't use modern language, but it was true to the time without being over the oldie. This is the most fun you can possibly have, is to write historical novels, because you get to go back to that place and see what it's like and say, look, you know, come with me, it's really cool here, come and have a look. You know, this is what life is like.
The first book in the Fifth Night series starts with the infamous murder of Thomas Becket in Canterbury Cathedral in 1170. Many people will have heard the words that King Henry II is alleged to have uttered in 1170. Will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest? He was referring to Thomas Becket, his own archbishop, the Archbishop of Canterbury. 4 knights took him at his word and broke into the cathedral at Canterbury on a cold December evening. They brutally murdered him on the altar of his own cathedral, and they took the top off his head with a sword and ground his brains into the altar. That was a real historical event, and I add a fictional fifth knight to the murderous 4, Sir Benedict Palmer. Palmer is uneasy about the crime, but he's in it for the money. But what he doesn't realise is that the knights are not there to murder Becket, but they are there to find an anchoress who is a cloistered nun hidden in the walls of Canterbury Cathedral. And Palmer is, at bottom, a man of honour, so he has a dilemma. Does he join with this mission to its conclusion, or does he try and save the anchoress?
King's Hound series is set in the beginning of the 11th century, in an England that had been conquered by a Danish king, an England that had bled silver for the last 50 years. The old nobility had vanished, at least some of them. They'd been killed in the battles. I have Halfdan, a young nobleman who's lost everything when his father was killed in the last battle against Knut. And Halfdan has only one thought in his head: to regain the power and the wealth that his father lost. And he doesn't care what it costs him. Society was in its beginning. Civilization was in its beginning, which means that I get the chance in my books to point to some things that I think are very essential for civilization and society and for a civilized society. That's what fascinates me.